Welcome to today's episode. I have been having a lot of fun since the last two episodes. We have had like a lot of insightful discussions, and I'm excited about checking out what today's quotes hold. So let's switch and get started. The first one is from The Earned Life. The Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman famously said, "What you see is all there is," spawning the widely adopted acronym okay, WISIATI. To point out how quickly we use the limited information at our disposal to make premature conclusions, it was yet another example of humans behaving as biased, irrational actors. In this case, rushing to judgment. I think this is like kind of a tongue-in-cheek statement. It's what you see is all there is a bias. I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, is that uh, like the other says, it's an excuse me, it's an example of how humans are irrational actors in this case, rushing to judgment because we have this bias that what we see is all there is to see. That's it. So pretty straightforward, I think. With that in mind, let's move on. At your best, intimacy, after all, is a shared experience. And creating a regular rhythm of shared experiences with a handful of close friends and family members will help you thrive. Because you're so much more productive at work and have healthier boundaries, you'll free up far more time for this joy. Okay, so the latter part of the sentence is about the productivity gains you get by following the advice in this book. So you have um, when you become productive at work and now you're able to establish boundaries at work, you'll actually have time for the community, for the shared experiences with close friends and family. And I just finished reading this book yesterday, The Well Lived Life. There was a highlight from that yesterday as well. And I just finished reading it. And one whole section in that book is about community, the value of community, and the importance of community in replenishing ourselves and replenishing our energy. So, yeah, this pretty much says the same thing, I think. Moving on. Cues. Highly charismatic people use both warm and competence cues to communicate successfully. We love being around people who make us feel like we are in both safe and capable hands. We like our leaders to be both highly effective and very approachable. We look for partners we can trust with our deepest secrets and call in an emergency. We want to work with people who are both friendly and productive. It basically says that people who are charismatic, they are charismatic because they portray both capabilities, warmth and competence. So there are a whole category of cues which are warmth, and there are a whole category of cues which show competence. And there needs to be a balance. I mean, of course, all of these cues, they have to be used appropriately, consciously even. And when you achieve that balance, that's where the charisma comes in. That's where the communication presence comes in. That in a way, let's say leadership presence. That's where it comes in. So, like the highlight goes to say, we love being around people who makes us feel like we're in both safe and capable hands. Safe and capable. That is safe because we feel warmth when we are there. We feel safe and capable because we know that they are competent. So let's go on. Originals. Time living abroad didn't matter. It was time working abroad. Being actively engaged in design in a foreign country that predicted whether the new collections were hits. The most original collections came from directors who had worked in two or three different countries. So the author Adam Grant, he's talking about like to travel and everything like that helps. Of course, that helps broaden our horizons. But the real measurable difference in the quality of their work came up when they actually worked in those other countries, worked in those culture, consciously thought about, okay, how do you work in this particular culture? So yeah, that's what it's coming to over here. Anything else? Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. Let's move on. Kill it with fire. Code yellows are not generally called by engineering managers or directors because the scope of their field of influence should be small enough to manage the problem, while other project management strategies. Long sentence. Code yellows are for systemic problems, a problem that fits entirely within the domain of a single engineering manager without touching or affecting any other group. Okay, yeah, I messed it up. Code yellows are for systemic problems, a problem that fits entirely within the domain of a single engineering manager without touching or affecting any other group is not systemic. So there is in this book there is this description of a method used by some team. I'm forgetting which team, maybe Google, and it's called Code Yellow. And a Code Yellow is raised by an engineering manager when they notice a systemic issue affecting multiple teams or the interaction between the teams. That's when it should be used. It's for systemic problems, not when the problem to be solved is entirely in the domain of one engineering manager. Then it's a local problem. You don't need a Code Yellow. It's really talking specifically about this method of Code Yellow. And if you want to know more about that, I'm guessing Google would help Code Yellow, or read the book. The links are in the description, as always. We're going to stolen focus. There are deeper forces than our phones and the web at work, and those forces led us in turn to develop a dysfunctional relationship with the web. This is referring to the whole industry, the whole the years of psychological study that has gone into building this system, building this um, the 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 world that we see today of the social world where driven by likes and comments and algorithmic feeds, news feeds, uh, basically getting you excited, getting you angry. That is what has helped. That is what has led to this dysfunctional relationship with the web. It's not just phones and web. It's like the deep human psychology, the study of the human psychology run by these large organizations, large corporations, who only care about the profit line, of course. And it's very tricky now. They all came up at a time when the only thing that mattered was profit line, and even if they are actually intending to make a change for the more positive, the forces of economy is actually working against them. So yeah, it's like a really dysfunctional relationship that we have with our web, with the system of likes and the system of being on the top of the feed and going viral and everything. It's all designed. It's not Nothing happened by accident. We'll move on to think again. When students confront complex problems, they often feel confused. A teacher's natural impulse is to rescue them as quickly as possible so that they don't feel lost or incompetent. Yet psychologists find that one of the hallmarks of an open mind is responding to confusion with curiosity and interest. While this is straightforward, this also reminds me a lot with this repeated highlights that we see from this book, um, Mind for Numbers. That also goes in a lot into this. How do you actually learn? How do you effectively learn any new concept? The book is written around maths, specifically, how do you learn maths? But it works with any new concept, any new topic that you want to study, any new complex problems. So it's repeated in that book as well that when you feel lost, when you're not able to solve a problem, there are different strategies, different tactics that you would do at that point. For example, you would focus deeply on that, and then if you can't solve it, you move away. But you start with the hardest problems that way. And why? Because now your mind is working on it. You're in that diffuse pattern mode where you can where your brain is working on the problem while you're focused on something else, probably, or you're focused on nothing. And this says something very similar, that rather than rescuing the students by giving them the answers, let them work on the problem in the background of their mind. That's where you get the curiosity and interest. That's where that comes in, and that's what helps in the long term retaining. What's the word for that? Long term retaining of the learning. We'll move on to stolen focus again. The scientific evidence we have so far suggests there are three main areas of child development where play has a major impact. One is creativity and imagination. It's how you learn to think about problems and solve them. The second is social bonds. It's how you learn to interact with other people and socialize. And the third is aliveness. It's how you learn to experience joy and pleasure. The things we learn from play aren't trivial add ons to becoming a functioning human being. Isabel explained. They are the core of it. This comes from the section in the book where the author talks a lot about play, the importance of play, and the importance of unstructured learning as well. I think this kind of goes back to the previous highlight we just discussed, unstructured learning or the diffuse mode thinking. We just talked about that. But also the aspect of play, just play. That is, you're leaving the child unsupervised, unsupervised play, and that's where they have the ideas of creativity and imagination. That's what sets them up for success later on. The practice of being unstructured in play. The book goes into a lot more detail. It talks about some examples of some schools that are actually working like this. They don't have a structured syllabus as such, but it's really the teachers are there to help and students are there to pick up whatever topic interests them and learn that. Yeah, so it's all in the book. We'll move on. Kill it with fire. A lot of repeated books today, and yeah, a bit of long highlights as well. So let's go through this quickly. If the organization is making changes that will not provide enough value to justify their expense, boost the value of those changes by turning them into a vehicle of better engineering practices. If the organization is paralyzed by missing information and unknown complications, promote resilience and eliminate the fear of failure. If problems extend beyond what any one team can solve by itself, allow the organization to temporarily reorganize itself around the problem. If teams are demoralized to the point where they're hurting themselves, challenge other parts of the organization to contribute to the success. I think this is just a summary of the different ideas discussed in the chapter that, okay, what would you do if organization is this way, is in this mode of operation right now. So, like the highlight said, if the organization is paralyzed by something, do this. If it's focused on one problem, temporarily reorganize the organization around that and so on. So I think it's all there, nothing much else to add over here. So we'll move on to the last one, the voltage effect. The story of Lift Pink illustrates a challenge for scaling enterprises of all varieties, knowing your audience. This matters because if you don't truly understand the different types of people you serve now, you can't accurately predict who will respond to a product, service, or intervention at scale. So this refers to the book describes the story of Lift Pink. It was a service that came up, and I'm forgetting the details of the service, but it was more like, if I remember correctly, it was something like heavy discounts. You buy a pass and you have discounts coming up for each and every ride, and that failed because they failed to understand the audience. Who are they actually selling to? And if you don't understand the different types of people you serve now, you can't accurately predict. I'm forgetting the details of what Left Pink was and why did it fail. But it was the fundamental nature, the fundamental reason it failed was because it failed to understand the audience. And when Lift Pink, the idea when it was with a small group of people, it worked and it looked promising, and they scaled it to a very large group of people. But they failed to understand that the small group of people was not truly representative, and the incentives didn't just work in that favor, in the favor of scaling the program. The book goes into talking about different types of factors that you would want to check, when you're scaling an idea. It goes. This is pretty much in the beginning of the book, if I remember correctly. So we have discussed this book before, and it's a good read. So go read this book. This is a very interesting book about scalability of problems. We'll move on, and that's really the end of it. I know I rushed through. It was fair. I think today all of these different highlights were fair. Long highlights, they kind of they're difficult to talk about, difficult to relate to. I get that. But anyway, like that's the end of today, and you all have a good weekend. Thank you for watching. Bye.